Chapter 9. Uncle Fred. I still did not feel at ease with Uncle Fred. He was a large man, very powerfully built, and to see us together, you would think we'd make the perfect cover picture for a story called The Boy Who Tried to Be a Man. There was a tremendous physical difference between us, and there was something else I don't know how to explain. We couldn't talk to each other. One time he took me to the lake and I couldn't think of one single thing to say all the way over or back. It was an awful feeling not to be able to think of one single thing worth saying. Every night before supper, Uncle Fred would take a swim in the pond. It was a ritual. He would come out on the porch in his bathing suit, put his towel on the back of a chair, pause for a moment on the steps, and then he would start running. He would run until he was at the very edge of the pond, and then he would dive. It was more of like a launch really, his body straight out, and he would go almost halfway across the pond before he hit the water. Then he would swim across, back, come up and dry off. This night, when he came up onto the porch, Hazeline and I were sitting in the swing. "You youngsters ought to take a dip, makes you feel good." "The water's too warm," Hazeline said. "I can't stand to swim in warm water. It's really ucky." Uncle Fred was rubbing the towel over his head, so we couldn't hear exactly what he was saying. But it was something about Hazeline and me being a lot better off if we'd take a dip. This was my one big dread, that some night I would have to go swimming with Uncle Fred. I could imagine that while he was running and executing that long, powerful dive, I would be wincing along. I had very sensitive feet, and then I would inch out into the water, terrified, and just stand there, bending my knees so everyone would think I was in deeper water than I was. Then, probably to complete the horror, Uncle Fred would suggest that I climb up on his shoulders and dive off. At that, Hazeline would call from the shore, "Wait, let me get my camera, wait now," for she would consider it a wonderful thing to be able to snap a picture of a disaster. And she would run down and get us in focus. All the while I would be standing on Uncle Fred's shoulders, shaking, and then she would say, "Go!" And with my whole body trembling, I would fall forward into the muddy brown water, knowing that the last sight I would ever see would be the reflection of the sun on that muddy water. They would ask my friend P.T. Burkiss to write a headline to go above the picture, and he would write, "Boy drowns, girl photographs it." I went on thinking about that until Hazeline said, "Dad?" Uncle Fred draped his towel around his shoulders. "What?" "Tom and I were talking about foxes this afternoon." "Foxes?" he interrupted. "Yes, and he was asking me about the different types of foxes, about black and red ones and all, and I told him you'd know." He rubbed the towel under his chin. "Well, as far as I know, and I could be wrong about this, black foxes are sort of like an accident, like a black-haired baby born in a family of redheads. The pigment gets intensified, and most of the time it'll just be one fox in a litter. There'll be 5 cubs maybe and only 1 black one, and you can take 2 black foxes and mate them and get 6 red cubs." "Is a black fox smarter than a red one, do you think?" I asked. "It's supposed to be. Has to be maybe to keep out of the hunter's reach. A hunter will do anything to get something rare." He leaned back against the porch railing. "When I was a boy, this was a long time ago, but I still remember it, I saw a fight between a red fox and a black one. It was during the mating season, and it was over this little red fox who looked like she didn't give a darn for either one of them." "Playing it cool," Hazeline said. "I was up in a tree. I don't even remember what I was doing up there. Probably some mischief. And in a little clearing ahead, I saw these 2 foxes. One black with just a little white on him, and the other red with a cross mark on his shoulders. I could almost see them. What was the fight like?" "You ever seen cats fight or dogs?" I nodded my head. "Well, that's the way that was. They were standing apart and walking around each other, just like dogs or cats, each testing the other, and all the time they were growling and snapping and darting at one another." He moved his shoulders as if he were involved in the fight himself. Then the red fox sprang at the black one, and just as quick as a whip, that black fox brought his tail around, he had an enormous tail, and shielded his head with it, All the red fox got was a mouthful of fur. What else? Well, that was all I saw, because they moved on through the woods. That was the last I saw of them. This little lady fox was just the tiniest bit closer to the black fox than the red. "Supper!" Aunt Millie called. "I'd better get myself dried off. You two go in." We went in and Aunt Millie said, "Tom, there's a letter for you on the table in the hall." This letter from P.T. Burkiss had been there all day and I had not even seen it. I tore it open right there in the hall. It was so thick I thought P.T. Burkiss had written me about a 10-page letter and I wanted to see what he had to say. Instead, it was a questionnaire he had made up, and he said that if I would answer the questions and send it back to him, he would be able to figure out what kind of person I was from my answers. He was so eager to have it returned that he had even included an envelope with his address on it. The questionnaire looked like this. Circle the correct answer. Number 1. If you found a whole box of candy bars, would you A. sell them, B. eat them, or C. try to find the owner? Number 2. How many TV commercials do you know by heart? A. None, B. more than none but less than 5, or C. more than 5. Number 3. The kind of commercial you hate the most is A. deodorant, or B. mouthwash. Number 4. The kind of hat you would most hate to wear is A. a small man's hat with a feather, B. a checkered cap, or C. a cap with a propeller on top. And number 5. Which cereal would you buy? A. Good Luckies, a cereal in the shape of horseshoes that is supposed to bring you good luck all day. B. Peppies, the cereal that cures that tired, run-down feeling. Or C. Friendlies, a cereal in the shape of a clasped hand that makes you have hundreds of friends instantly. There were about 52 and they all sounded like they were a real test that you would take in a magazine. Petey was good at this kind of thing. He could imitate any sort of writing perfectly. "My goodness, you certainly did get a nice long letter from your friend," Aunt Millie said. "Come on and get your supper and then you can read it." "All right." Naturally, I did not want to sit down and eat supper when I had this whole questionnaire to do, but I sat down anyway, kept the paper open in my lap, and read while I was pretending to eat. Number 6. If you walked in your sleep, would you A. say, "Oh well, lots of people walk in their sleep every night," B. tie yourself to the bed, or C. invent a little camera and strap it onto your head so that the next day you could develop the film and see where you'd been? "I said you could read the letter after supper," Aunt Millie said patiently. She always liked everyone to give full attention to their eating. "Oh, this looks good," Hazeline said happily, flapping open her napkin. "Yes'm," I said. That night, after I was in bed, I lay awake for a long time. I had a very good feeling. I had already thought of a questionnaire I was going to make up for Petey, and also I felt good because I had seen the fox again. Seeing something beautiful always made me feel good. One time in a museum I saw an old model of a sailing ship that someone had made long ago. The sails were sewn just as carefully as sails that really had to hold ocean winds, and the boards were fitted as well as boards that really had to keep water out. And I just stood there. I thought I would never get enough of looking at that old sailing ship. My mum and dad practically had to pull me away, and even after we had left the museum and gone home, that was the only thing in the whole museum that I could remember. My cousin Eleanor had gone with us to the museum, and she had seen an old dollhouse she liked. And as soon as we got home, she started getting spools and boxes and stuff and trying to make a doll's house like the one she'd just seen. But it was enough for me just to have seen that old ship and to know that it was there where I could see it again sometime. Now I felt the same way about the black fox.